Hey everyone, Vincenzo Calla here with VCalla Productions, and today I'm sitting here with the Honourable Caroline Mulroney, who is the MPP for York Simcoe and serves as Ontario's Minister of Transportation and Ontario's Minister of Francophone Affairs. Thanks, Caroline, for your time, and welcome to Let's Discuss Politics.
Thanks, Vincenzo. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Well, it's so great to have you here, and we were chatting a bit about this before the call, but today's a very special episode of Let's Discuss Politics. It's the 50th episode since I started it back in 2021, my first show back in 2021. So it's so great to have you here, and let's get this interview started. So our first segment is called Caroline's Story, where we'll talk a bit about who is and her political history. So first off, can you tell me a bit about yourself, your story, and how you got your start in politics?
Sure. Well, I'm a mother. I've got four kids, a wife and a sister, a daughter, and my family is very, very important to me. A big part of who I am. Um, Professionally, I've got a background in law and in business, and I think you also know that I grew up in politics. My dad was prime minister, and so I was born in Montreal, but he became leader of the PC Party of Canada on my ninth birthday. He actually won on my actual ninth birthday. And the next day we moved to Ottawa. And so I grew up in the most political town in Canada, surrounded by people who do politics for a living. And, that really inspired me. I always thought, when I was a teenager growing up, that I was going to get into politics one day. I saw all these people, my family, but also people who worked for the government who left their homes and their families to come from all sorts of different parts of Canada to work in Ottawa to fight for things that they believed in. I just thought that was awesome. So I thought that was something I wanted to do, but I wanted to go and get my degrees and work and get some professional experience before I got into politics one day.
So I want to talk a bit about that journey to Queen's Park now. So obviously you grew up in a political family, political town, and you're surrounded by politics, like you're mentioning, and you are highly educated, Harvard, NYU, and you served in the private industries for a while. So what made you decide to run in 2018? And maybe a little bit more, how did you set a name for yourself as Caroline Mulroney, running in York Simcoe and won successfully as the MPP there? It's almost 5 years ago now. What was that like?
Well, I went and pursued the private sector, and I really enjoyed it and I learned a lot. But as someone who always wanted to get involved in politics, I always felt like something was missing. There's that public service element. I started a charity called the Shoebox Project for Shelters back in 2011, and I really love that. But it grew so quickly. I had to get the support that I needed to have the charity be run by other people so that I could do my day job. But I really love that connection to community. And so I'd always thought I'd run for politics when my kids had left the house, but I was really yearning to do it earlier. I was really getting fired up about the things that I was seeing at the provincial level when Kathleen Wynne was Premier of Ontario and the Liberals have been in power for so long. I just thought we were headed in the wrong direction. So it was a combination of those things, my personal desire to get involved in politics and for public service, and also feeling like that was the right time. And then York Simcoe is a community that's growing. It's a mix of rural and suburban. It has so much potential. And it was really being held back, I think, by just the lack of attention it was getting from the provincial government. So I want to be part of the solution. And I'm really pleased that in the 5 years, almost 5 years that I've been elected and our government's been in office, that we've really delivered for the people of my riding.
Well, and by the time this episode will come out, it'll be at the 5 year mark. So it's definitely a big thing that has happened in Ontario. Lots of change over these past 5 years, and let's talk about that now in the next segment. So this segment is called Serving as an Elected Official, where we'll talk a bit about your experiences and achievements as an elected official. First as the MPP, and then we'll talk about your role as the minister. So first off, I want to talk about being the MPP for York Simcoe. What has been your favorite part about serving those people as their local elected MPP?
Well, I think my answer to serving as MPP will be similar to some of my answers on serving in government. But what I'll say is that being a voice for people is just the essence of public service, and being able to represent people's interests at Queen's Park is what I was elected to do. And, that's the motivation, and that I think is the greatest honor that we all get, we all have once we're elected. My favorite part is being able to solve long-standing issues. And York Simcoe had a long list of long-standing issues that had not really been resolved. The Bradford bypass is a freeway that we're moving ahead with, that farmers in the Holland Marsh, which is really the salad bowl of Ontario, have been asking for decades. And so we're moving ahead with that. But there are other ones that are even a little more complicated. Like there is a piece of land that was privately owned, that was bought, in the normal course back in the 80s. But over time, it became provincially significant wetland. And members of the community were asking that it be saved and be donated to the Greenbelt and not be developed. That was not an easy thing to be able to deliver. But I worked closely with the Premier and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark, and we found a way forward on that. It took 4 years to do it. And I can tell you, it was complicated, complex, but it was so rewarding. And members of the community, Georgina in particular, were just thrilled because they've been asking for it for so long. So there's a personal satisfaction that I get, and I know that my colleagues get, when we're able to bring either our creativity or just our stick-to-itiveness, our ambition to getting things done, and finding a way to solve some of these problems that have been, really important to community members for a long time.
Well, definitely, and definitely a big part of sort of what your government has been doing. Obviously, the last election, which was highly successful for you, was the slogan "Get it done." So it's definitely something that's been happening. And on that now, I want to talk about your role as a minister. So, what have been some of your favorite achievements as a minister? Maybe talk a bit about transportation, then Francophone affairs, and whatever else you feel may be important to talk about today.
Sure. Um, well, as you said, our slogan was, getting it done, and building was the first year, was first time was getting it done, then it was building Ontario. And, for me, we were able to make significant headway on a file that has perplexed the GTA for decades, which is transit expansion. And there's just never been alignment. The Premier put forward a plan in April of 2019, and I was appointed minister in June of 2019 with a subway plan. And we were able to go out and get Toronto City Council to approve our plan, and then take that approval and go to the federal government and say, this is the right plan. It's our plan, but the city agrees. Go to the federal government and get their agreement that it's the right plan for Toronto, which is really, Canada's economic engine. And so we got all three levels of government aligned. We got the federal government to support, the construction of this to the tune of 40% of the overall costs. And so it really was a historic deal. And it is the largest transit expansion plan anywhere in North America right now, and in Canadian history. So it's a new subway line in downtown Toronto, the Ontario line, expansion of 3 existing lines, and an LRT in Hamilton. So I'm very proud of that accomplishment, which is really a government-wide one. On the Francophone side, I think there's the obvious one, because it was controversial early on, but the establishment of a new Francophone university that's governed by and for Francophones. It's called l'Université de l'Ontario Français. And so moving ahead with that, it's actually been in place. The university is built, and it's been in place for 2 years now. So that, I think, is an obvious one. But we have a smaller policy called our economic development policy for Francophones, which I'm particularly proud of, because it's the first time a government has recognized the economic importance and value of the Francophone community to the overall economy in Ontario. We have a bilingual and a Francophone population here that does business in English and French, but also in French. And that has a great economic value to our overall economy, but also it lends an attractiveness to our workforce and to Ontario as a whole. And in your area, in the Ottawa region, obviously there's a significant Francophone population. So being able to highlight that has been something that I'm very proud of. In fact, I'm going to Ottawa tomorrow to address a new group called the Fédération of Francophone, Fédération des gens d'affaires francophones de l'Ontario, which is a community of Francophone business owners and entrepreneurs that we set up for the purposes of really promoting Francophone economic development in Ontario and beyond our borders as well.
Well, definitely an important issue, and I sort of focused on. I made a little focus on Le Mois de la Francophonie this past March. I did a video on that recently, and it's such an important part of Ontario, especially out in my region of Ottawa, where have a really big population of Francophone in Ontario and Ottawa. So it's really important and some important work there. And on the transit file, obviously in Ottawa, we have a big transit file too. I won't go too deep into that because I take it every day and we could talk for hours about our system, but big thing that your government is working on as well. But we'll leave it there and go on to the next segment now. The last segment now is called The World of Politics Around Us, where we'll talk a bit about this world of politics that surrounds us. So first off, who is or who was another politician or some politicians that inspire you?
Well, Vincenzo, that's probably the easiest question anyone could ask me, and it's my dad. And and although, some people might think it's not inspired to just pick my dad, um, he really is an incredible politician and was a great public servant. And he really he's got instincts about politics that he still relies on, and he advises not only me but a lot of other people who are in politics today. He advised the Liberal cabinet when they were dealing with the NAFTA renegotiations. And so he's somebody who just has a great instinct for politics and for policy. And so I'm really lucky that I get to call on him as an advisor whenever I need.
Well, definitely, and your father is another one of my political icons, and I always look back at that massive majority in '84. So it's definitely a telling sign and an important thing that a lot of politicians can look at, and very important there. So finally is the last question, which I always like to end on. And it is what is one or a few issues that you would like to focus on more that you think need to be focused on more?
Well, I can tell you one issue that I think about a lot, but it's complex. And it's not just at MTO, but it's something that we're dealing with government wide. And I know governments around the world are dealing with this is, the transition to a digital based world. Delivering government services in a digital world, how you do that in a secure way, in a way um, that's seamless for people. Technology is always evolving, and government's not known for being that innovative. So what kind of investments should we be making? Are they the right ones? How do we update them? That's something that we deal with a lot. And I think it's really sort of kind of the cutting edge of where we need to be as a government, but it's not always easy for government to do that. So that's something that I think we do focus on, and we just have to continue to be laser focused on it moving forward. Personally, an issue for me that's just really important is human trafficking. When I was Attorney General, I was involved with the file, and as Minister of Transportation, I've also taken it up because Highway 401 is a huge. It's very sad. It's a huge corridor for trafficking of young girls and young women. And we've looked at making investments that we can along the 401, like additional lighting, supporting training programs for truck drivers so that they can identify and report trafficking at truck stops, things, communicating with people so they know the signs. But there's so much more that we can do, but it's just something that's kind of close to my heart that I really think that we need to continue to focus on more.
Definitely, and both very important issues and issues that I continue to look at and find important to focus on as well, and something that I am confident that will be continued to be looked at and focused on by yourself, your government, and by all levels who are very involved and find this an important issue. So that is all for today. Thank you, Caroline, so much for joining me. It was great having you.
It was a real pleasure to be on your show. Thanks for inviting me, and congratulations on 50 shows.
Well, it's so great to have you. It was so great to have you. Thank you so much. And if you like this one, make sure to go check out the other part with Caroline on YouTube for top 10. If you're watching this at the time of the premiere, it's going to be coming out on Friday. So Let's Discuss Politics is a VCalla production. So until the next video, I'm Vincenzo Calla, signing out.